Okay, Pete, so part 2 in the 2-part series.
Yeah.
Last time we looked at liquidity, liquidity pools, and liquidity providing.
Yeah.
And today we're taking it a step further and looking at 2 sort of novel applications of liquidity pools.
Got it.
And the first one is called the JLP, the Jupiter Liquidity Pool. Before we get into it, we've got a quick recap on some stuff that we covered kind of near the start of the series and some shorts, but I thought it might be good for you to go over and for the viewer as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to recap on is futures. Future is basically an agreement to buy something in the future. And so we could have an agreement, you and I, say I'm going to buy 10 kilograms of apples from you for $100 in a month's time. This would be our agreement here, and this would be the market price for apples. And as the month comes to an end, the price of our contract and the market price of apples should converge to a point like this. The next thing we need to recap on is perpetual futures. The difference between perpetual futures and futures is that a perpetual futures contract, it never expires. And so if it never expires, how do you make sure that it sticks to the underlying spot price?
Like you have people paying to keep it open, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. In order for the perpetual price to track the underlying asset, you have something called a funding rate, which you're right. It's a small fee that one side of the market pays to the other. In a market that's trending up, the perpetual future might trade at a premium to the underlying. And in that case, the people that have a long position will pay a little fee to those with a short position. What that should encourage is people not to be betting on it going up and people to bet on it going down.
Yeah.
And that will reduce the spread and make them converge.
Got you.
The last thing to recap is leverage. Do you want to take a stab at it before I go ahead?
Yeah, so leverage pretty much allows traders to make bigger profits with less money. The downside is if the trade goes against them, they get liquidated.
Spot on, Pete. That's really good. So leverage is basically a way for traders to borrow money to increase their position size and magnifies their losses and gains. If I put $1,000 down, I could use 10 times leverage and trade with a position of $10,000.
Yeah.
And let's say my trade went up 10%, times it by 10, I've made 100%, which is double my money. Leverage is just a tool that traders use to magnify their losses and gains. Okay, so now that we've done the recaps, we can get onto the new stuff. We've got something called Jupiter Liquidity Pool. We probably covered Jupiter the most on our series.
Yeah.
Among many things, they have a perpetual futures exchange where you can trade the perpetual futures that we just talked about.
You can do this on the Jupiter?
Yeah, you can trade perps on that. A key part of the exchange is something called the Jupiter Liquidity Pool. It's basically what traders use to trade with leverage. As I said, you can trade with leverage, and on Jupiter's platform, it's up to 100 times. So if you're trading with 100 times and you trade 1% against you, you'd get liquidated and you'd lose your lot. It's another liquidity pool, a bit like we talked about with the apples and the money in there.
Yeah.
But in this one, instead of having just 2 assets, we've got 5.
Okay.
So we've got Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, USDC, and USDT.
Got you.
It's all in this pool, and representing little slices of this pool is the JLP token. It's just a share of these assets. If you're a trader looking to trade with leverage on Jupiter's exchange, you'd basically borrow some of the funds from this pool, and as a result, you pay fees. All the fees are put back into the JLP pool, and traders' profits and losses. If a trader makes a good profit, because the pool's taking the other side of the trade, the pool has to pay him his profits. If they make a bad trade, then the Jupiter liquidity pool is making that profit. So this JLP token, it represents this liquidity pool. So it's backed by sort of an index fund of these 5 assets. That's the first thing. Second thing is that it's earning fees. So fees are constantly getting added to this pool, a bit like with a liquid staking, which you talked about. And the third thing is traders' profits and losses. And so what you end up with is this asset, JLP. It's kind of a unique asset backed by those 3 things. And basically since inception over like a year and a half ago, it's quadrupled. Similar to a liquid staking token, maybe INF, but the yield's just coming from a different spot.
The JLP is this kind of token. It's also what they call the liquidity pool as well.
Yeah, JLP is the liquidity pool, Jupiter liquidity pool, but you often denote the token by just putting a dollar sign in front of it.
Right.
It can be a bit confusing, but yes. Just like liquid staking tokens, the yield's baked into the price. Fees are sort of the main reason why it's done well over time. So as fees get added in, the JLP token just rises and sort of goes like this.
It's just kind of like the aggregate price of these markets.
Yeah.
Plus the yield of that.
Plus traders' profits and losses.
Right.
Yeah. What's unique about JLP is that it opens up opportunities for advanced strategies, and we're going to talk about one in the next video.
Nice one.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is Meteora's DLMM, which stands for Dynamic Liquidity Market Maker. When we talked about liquidity pools last episode, we were actually talking about something called an AMM, which is an automated market maker. And if you can remember, what was good about that liquidity pool is that it would always take the other side of your trade from 0 to infinity. What we've got here is, that's from the last video, the AMM. For every price that the trade can be made at, there's got to be some liquidity. So if you can imagine that we take the liquidity from here, what we end up with, if we take all the liquidity out from the AMM and we look at it as sort of a sliding price scale, we see that from 0 to infinity, all the liquidity is spread out. This is a bit of a problem because it's such a wide range, it's an infinite range that this liquidity has to cover. At any one time, let's say the price is here, only this small amount of liquidity compared to all the stuff that he's put in is getting used. And so it's quite inefficient. That's where DLMM comes in. With DLMM, the first thing is we can concentrate that liquidity. Let's say the price of apples was trading instead at $100. So what we've done there instead is we've concentrated the liquidity. This is at the price level 96, and here is at the price level 104. So we've got $9 of liquidity spread between 9 different, and we're going to call these bins. That's crucial, bins. These are the plastic bottles. We're going to call this the active bin. So we've got bins, this is the active bin.
So we're trading at 100?
Yeah, this is at the active bin, that's where the market price is at.
Oh yeah.
Above is only going to have apples, and below is only going to have dollars. Now we've got our setup with a DLMM. It's concentrated because it's between 96 and 104.
Yeah.
And so we've got the active bin here, and in the active bin we have both an apple and some dollars. In the active bin, it always contains both tokens, let's say.
Yeah.
Let's say that the market price outside the pool rises to 101. Someone would come along and they say, right, that's an attractive trade, I can make $1 here. So they take this apple and they put some money in there. They take away the apple and you get left with some dollars in here and one for your apple. The price could rise to 102. Someone comes along, they buy the apple, and in return, there you go, that's them buying the apple. And this can happen on the downside as well.
Is this the range it actually is or not? It's $9.
Yeah, in our example, we've got $9 of liquidity over a $9 range. So we've got $1 in each.
Yeah.
This can happen on the downside too. So price falls back down to $101. Then I come along with the apple.
Yeah.
And I sell that back into the pool.
Right.
Because it's a liquidity pool, you're also earning fees. This is your liquidity here. This is your the fees that you've earned for doing that.
One.
So you're getting rich whilst people are trading with your liquidity. And the reason why this is better than the AMM is because it's concentrated, liquidity is going to be getting used more often.
Yeah.
What are you going to get?
You earn more fees.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's capital efficient and you're earning greater fees. We've talked about these being liquidity bins.
Yeah.
And each bin's positioned at a certain price. So this one's at $100, this at 99, this at 101.
Yeah.
But there's something else involving bins, and that is something called bin step.
Right.
And basically what that is what's the difference between each bin?
$1.
In our example, yeah, we're looking at in dollars, but it's never going to be exactly $1 because a bin step it's measured in basis points. You've got a percentage point, a basis point is that divided by 100 again. So there's 100 basis points in 1 percentage point. If it was 100 basis points, that's going to be 1%. If this bin was at $100, you times it by 1.01, and that would be $101.
Yeah.
But if you times that by 1.01 again, it's not going to be 102, it's going to be slightly more. With the AMM that we looked at last time, where they got a multiplier to 2.5 billion, this is not the case with this one. Back to the bin steps, you could have a bin step of 1, and that would mean that your range, it could be between $101 and $99. It would just make the range really tight, and that means that your liquidity would be even more concentrated into these few. And so you can make even greater profits from providing liquidity, just because people are going to be using that money even more. The problem with having a small bin step, once it moves outside of this range, your liquidity is not going to earn fees. Because it's only valid between, in this case, $96 and $104.
Right.
So
like different people buy at different points in liquidity pool in DLMM.
Yeah, so you could have your pool between this range, and I could have mine here.
And you can choose that.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. And I could have mine really sort of a small bin step, really short like this. And you could have yours at a 200 bin step, for example, and have it between $50 and $150.
Yeah. My range of liquidity is between 50 quid and 100 quid.
Yeah.
And yours is between 70 quid and 75 quid.
Yeah.
Even though if it's between 70 and 75, people still trade the same amount in my pool as they do yours. Do you get better fees because your pool's smaller or not?
Yeah, because for the same, let's say we put the same amount of money in, the same amount of liquidity.
Yeah.
Because
mine's spread out.
Because yours is more spread out.
I get that. Yeah.
But you've got the advantage of, because if, let's say the price fell out my range, I'm not earning money and I'm subject to impermanent loss as well, which we talked about.
Alright, nice.
So the dynamic part of DLMM, where the D comes from, you can customize how the liquidity is sort of shaped.
If I had from 50 to 100 quid, I could put like 90% of it from 50 to 60 quid and 10% from 60 to 100.
Yeah, kind of like, almost exactly like that. So let's say we had one like this. This is called bid ask. So it'd be like this. Each line here would be a bin. This would be 100, 104, and 96. This one here would be really full of money. This one slightly less, slightly less, slightly less. And the active bin, this one here, would have almost nothing at all. And then to the right, you'd have a couple apples, 5 apples, 20 apples, and 50 apples in the last one. It enables sort of customization with your liquidity providing. DCA, so if you think the price of apples is going to go down in the short term but up in the long term, you could just do a one-sided deposit. So it would literally just be cash. And then as the price of apples falls, these would get swapped out, the cash would get swapped out for apples as your liquidity buys up apples. Then you close a position once it gets to here, and you open up a new one with just apples this time that you've bought. And you sort of sell the apples at higher and higher prices, and the whole time you'd be earning fees as well. If you're going to dollar cost average, buy in a bit at the start and sell out every day at the end, you might as well use DLMM, do the same thing, but also earn fees at the same time. Any questions?
You can only use Meteora's DLMM in the Jupiter liquidity pool, or you can use it on any coin.
Oh no, sorry. So the DLMM and the Jupiter liquidity pool, they're totally different ideas. Right. They're just two different examples of, novel liquidity pools. Yeah. What I've been doing over the last few weeks is practicing this, because if you do this successfully, you can actually make sort of significant fees. Maybe you could get a 30% return in an hour just from providing liquidity. Even if a coin's like tanking, like that, the volume, if it's between your range, of course, could be so great that the fees that you earn outweigh your loss from the token crashing.
Right.
If you want, I can show you how we can sort of do this, but there's also, for the people watching, there's a chap called Heavy Metal Cook, and he runs a boot camp, 4 hours over 2 days teaching people this.
For free?
That's why I tuned in. Yeah, for free. If you want to learn how to make this into a profitable strategy, I'll put a link in the description. Any other questions, Pete?
No, I think it's good. Seems pretty cool. Nice strategy. The more episodes we're doing, there's just kind of more and more strategies where it's like, the more skill you have, actually makes making money kind of a more certain thing in an uncertain market.
Like an information advantage, yeah. Just one final thing is that for DLMM, because you get impermanent loss, like we talked about last time, when you deposit liquidity, if the price moves far away, even if it's still in your range, you suffer from impermanent loss. So what you actually want is you want a market that looks something like this. Just trending sideways.
Yeah.
Because
to stay in your liquidity provider.
Exactly. It stays within your range, you don't suffer too much impermanent loss, and you generate fees this entire time.
Got it.
You'd think as a trader you want, you probably, if you're going long, you want it to pump. But in the case of this, you want tokens that are kind of just going sideways.
Surely you can't buy these on stablecoins then?
You can do these on stablecoins, yeah, but there's just real low fees.
So isn't that just like kind of a money glitch?
Yeah, there's loads of ways to make money in crypto, it's what people don't understand.
I want to do that tonight.
Alright, nice one.